New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Good morning. My name is Reverend Victoria Bomberry, and I am so happy to welcome you here this morning to our discussion on the Science of Mind textbook. And this is a real discussion, and so I'm hoping that whoever is listening will chime in and ask questions and join in this conversation about the Science of Mind textbook. So we're looking at the second chapter today, the way it works. If you go to a CSL center, you may be following the traditional practice of going over the first few chapters of the Science of Mind textbook at the beginning of the year. And it's always a time to just kind of refresh and really get back to the core teachings of religious science. And so if you're doing that in your center, this is just an amplification of a discussion that you may already be having. Last week, Reverend Robert talked about the thing itself, which is universal energy, mind, intelligence, spirit. And the thing, right? The thing is that thing that we are always humanity has been concerned with investigating. The thing, what is it that makes life possible? You know, what are what is that ultimate reality that makes life possible? So that's the thing. It's not anything that we know easily. It is something that we have been exploring as humans in consciousness for millennia, right? Ever since we started to realize that we were beings. So there are thousands of names for it, right? So Ernest Holmes chose to just say the thing, right? Just to kind of get it out there, you know, what is it? What is this thing that we're looking at? But there's thousands of names for it. You know, you might call it God. You may call it Creator. You may call it Allah, Buddha. You can call it by any name. It's just, but none of them can do justice to what it is, because it is ineffable. It is almost impossible to capture what this is. So every time we look at the divine, we're just touching a part of it. So it's impossible because it is infinite. And every time we try to put a name to it, we only catch just this glimmer of what it is. And of course, we can never know the totality of it because of the infinite nature of the thing itself. But we can start calling it, Diego says he calls it the now. And that's a really interesting concept, Diego. You know, there are people who say, we're in this time, right? We're in time. And as human beings, we're in time. And time has this window to infinity. So in time, we are in the now, right? And that now is God. So as we're apprehending this, what we're apprehending by being in this incarnation is God. So great point, Diego. I really love that you brought that up. So that is a name, right? That is a name and a conceptualization of what the thing is, what God is, or whatever you choose to call it. We have every tradition has a name for this ineffable, or many names, in fact. So oftentimes we say there's 1,000 names for God, but I'm sure that there's many, many more than that. So we want to call it whatever resonates for us. And one moment it may be now, it may be love, it may be truth, it may be goodness, it may be love. But what we know is that all of those qualities of God are just telling us something about it, right? We can't get the whole picture, but we have these elements that we can look at to begin to experiencing it in a fuller way. And there's whole languages that have grown up in various spiritual traditions to describe what it is and one's relationship to it and its relationship to humanity and creation as a whole. We believe that there is end quote, there is a universal mind, spirit, intelligence that is the origin of everything. That's what we believe. And Ernest Holmes says, it is first cause, it is God, the universal life, the energy, finds an outlet in and through all that is energized and through everything that lives. And that's the Science of Mind textbook, page 35. So in Western philosophy, first cause is the self-creating being, God. We call it God. That's one way of delineating what we're talking about. Which every chain of causes must ultimately go back to. Okay, so first cause. So that is the self-creating being, right? To which every chain of causes must ultimately go back to. So this was a term that was introduced by Aristotle, who said that cause in nature exists in a chain stretching backward. So he also called the first cause the prime mover. That is deity in pure form. So what we're looking at is something that is not created. It's always been there. It's always there, and for infinity. It's eternal, and it's in the absolute pure form. In Christianity, first cause, of course, is identified with God. Aristotle didn't identify it necessarily with God. And of course, during his time, there were many, many gods to try to describe what this thing is. But, his contribution was there is this fundamental first cause that is pure in form, that set in motion everything that exists in creation. So, this idea of this pure form or this essence is what we are examining, through philosophy and through religion. Ernest Holmes goes on to say, there is one energy back of all that is energized. This energy is in everything. There is one spirit back of all expression. That is the meaning of the mystical saying, in him we live, move, and have our being. And that's from Acts 17:28. And, I think that oftentimes I've heard people pray and they will use this piece of scripture uh, in that which we move, live, and have our being, right? Or some sort of uh, iteration of that phrase is a part of the prayer, because we absolutely believe this, that we are in God, right? We are in God, and God is in us. So it's not a one-way street. This is something that is reciprocal. So we are in God, and God is in us. And I love that. I love that relationship, right? That relationship that is so intimate, and when we know it, we feel it with our five senses. And when we move beyond looking just with the sensory apparatuses that we've been given, we come to even a deeper connection with the thing itself, what this ineffable power, ever creating power is. And this piece of scripture was uttered in Athens. And I kind of, I was reading Acts, and I was like, wow, this is very, very interesting, to kind of look back at this time when there was a new way of talking about divinity, a new way of talking about humankind's relationship to divinity. And if we look at where this was taking place, when Paul was speaking, when he spoke these words, he was in Athens, and Athens at that point was this, it was a metropolis in ancient terms. It's not like the giant cities, the big metropolises that we have now, but it was, for its time, it was this bustling, highly populated place where all kinds of people came together. They came into contact with one another, and all of the people from that region, brought their own ideas into the space. And, there was a lot of, I'm sure, many heated discussions about belief, and about how we live in the world, or how we ought to live in the world, or how we ought to worship, and all of this. So it wasn't, in a lot of ways, it wasn't unlike what we experience today. People were kind of in their favorite corners, but they were converging, right? They were converging here, and there was a lot of heated uh, discussion about what this is. And these beliefs converged, they commingled, and of course they clashed as well. And there were those who were receptive to what Paul had to say, and Paul gained a lot of people who followed what wasn't called Christianity at that point, right? It was a new way of being in the world, and a lot of people resonated with it. They were receptive to it. And that is the key phrase here, receptive to it. And leading up to this pronouncement is a statement that underlines the idea of first cause. Paul says, the God who made the world and everything in it, he who is the Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in shrines made by human hands, as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all mortals life and breath to all things. And that's Acts 17:24 through 25. This is an interesting reference, and it kind of harkens back to what Aristotle was saying, right? That truth that there is this pure form, right? This pure energy, this first cause that gives life and breath to all things and doesn't need anything. God doesn't need those shrines, right? Those shrines are for us. God doesn't need that. God is complete and whole in itself. It has no need. So, let's think about this. When we pray, right, and we acknowledge that we live and have our being in this ultimate reality, there is that place where there is no need. That is God. That's where we go to, right? That's the place that we go to. There's no need, there's no lack, there's no limitation. There is just this pure potentiality. And there's a lot of philosophical things here, and I'm not going to go into all of these different arguments, but we believe that there is that pure potentiality that is expressed in us by us. So God is that pure form, and we and all of creation are that potentiality in action, right? So we are that potentiality being expressed. So it always has kind of made me wonder, right? When earlier, when I first started in science mind, well, in religious science, I wondered, okay, people say there's that place that's never been hurt, and I would think, oh my goodness, uh, I don't know what that is. I have no idea what that is until I could, kind of grasp this idea that yes, divinity has never been hurt. It can carry everything, right? It is that pure form that doesn't know anything about all of these things that happen. Well, that doesn't experience it in the way that we experience it. Let me put it that way. Because we carry something and we internalize it, and then it becomes the way that we're conditioned. But that pure part of us that is the divine has never experienced that because it is in that whole form. So that's who we are. We're in it, it's in us, and there's that intimate relationship. So when we're in an alignment with it, when we're receptive to it, then we are in that place of pure reality. Now, can we achieve it? Yes, we can achieve it. We get glimpses of it. We live in it. And when we call people saints, right, or enlightened beings, those are the beings who have been able to live to a great extent that reality, or maybe completely, right? And they share that with others. So it's not just a sitting in that place and being. It is actually, this relationship that is a part of this entire consciousness. The next section of the chapter in the Science of Mind text is devoted to demonstrating what our relationship is to first cause, spirit, God, or whatever we choose to call it. So let's take a look. So I'm going to be reading from page 36, 2 of the second chapter. Oh, sorry, it's taken me a minute to get here. We now know that this is what we are, because we could not be anything else. But we do not know how much of this we are. Oh, okay, so that's the problem, right? Right there. Is we don't know how much of this pure spirit that we are. It's the only original cause. There is nothing but that. That's the only thing that we are made of. There is only God. When we think of there is only God, that first cause, there was nothing else. There was nothing added to it. There was only God, or only first cause, or only source. So that is what we are made of. That is all we are. So the our eternal question is, in our eternal journey, or our journey, I must say, is that we are exploring that, right? We're learning what we are. In everything that we do, we're learning what we are as these divine beings. And sometimes we think, oh, well, there's only just one part of, we can only be a part of this, like we're just a little particle. And yet, what we believe is that, we are everything that God is, we are. Everything that God is, we are. It's that close. We have all of that. We have everything. Everything, that wholeness, that completeness is ours. When we see it as it is, then we will see each other, or we will see ourselves as we are. We can only see it by looking at it through our own eyes. Hence, we shall find a better God when we shall have arrived at a higher standard for humanity. If God is to interpret itself to humanity, he must interpret himself or itself through humanity. And the Spirit can make no gift that we do not accept. Oh my goodness. This is a short chapter, but it is so jam-packed. And, you might say, oh, well, Reverend Victoria, if we are God, why don't we, what is this life? What is this life, right? And of course we believe, yeah, we are in this form right now. This is a manifestation of the divine. We are those manifestations. This form will pass away. Forms pass away. They come into being, and then they go back into this place of pure form. And then there is a continual evolution of consciousness of this being that we are, that is forever on this upward spiral in evolution, right? So it will pass away. And, there's a beautiful country, well, I guess it's a country song by the Abbott Brothers. And, the thing says, the song says, the lyrics are, when my body won't hold me anymore. And I love that line because that's exactly, I think it captures exactly, what this existence is. This body, yes, it comes into form and it serves its purpose, and then we move on. And it can't hold us anymore because we are so huge. We may think we're just this little particle, and of course, in the grand scheme of things, when we think about this one small body that we are at this moment in God, it sounds like, it seems like, oh, well, how can that be everything? And yet it is everything because that eternal part of us is everything. So that's the exciting, wonderful thing about this, right? We are so much more that we can ever imagine. At some point, I believe, yes, we do get these glimpses, and we are so energized and so transformed that we actually understand what it is to be divine, to be whole, to be complete, right? We get that. We get it. If God is to interpret itself to humanity, it must interpret itself through humanity. Oh, that's interesting, isn't it? Um, let's think about that a little bit. If God is to interpret itself to humanity, it must interpret itself through humanity. So we really have to take a look at who we are, right? We have to get to know one another. It probably goes back to, that idea of know yourself, right? Know yourself. That's an ancient maxim. Know yourself. And, it doesn't stop at just, okay, I'm Victoria Bomberry, I have this background, I do this work. No, it's not about that kind of thing. It's about knowing that deep part of ourselves, who we are in reality. You know, um, sometimes, well, I'm going to use the story of Narcissus, right? Narcissus looked into a pool of water, and before that, Narcissus had never seen the image of himself, right? There was no image of Narcissus in his mind. He was just going about doing whatever. And then he looked in this pool and he saw himself. Well, all he could see in this pool was his outward beauty, right? His outward beauty, the beautiful form that he was in. And he fell in love with that beautiful form. And that is one thing, but he became obsessed with only that one thing, right? He became obsessed with his own beauty. And evidently, his beauty was unsurpassed by anything around him or any other people around him. And he became obsessed with it. So that's not what what I'm pointing toward. What I'm pointing toward is that oftentimes when we look at ourselves, we only see one aspect of ourselves. And a lot of times, if we look in the mirror, uh, we may not even catch a glimpse of that beauty that we are. Um, and yet, if we do look in that mirror, we can and we do it through love. We are looking in the mirror, and a lot of people do mirror work and do affirmations, looking in the mirror, and it is a way of generating this connection with self as the as something larger than that ego self. So when Narcissus was captured and became obsessed with his beauty, he was in that ego self and could not get out of that. Now, when we look in the mirror, if we're looking with love, with that pureness that is ours, it's a part of, it's our birthright. That purity is our birthright. When we look at that pure love is our birthright. When we look into the mirror with pure love, we can see divinity. And I think it's a good thing to do, to capture that, to, actually look at ourselves with love. And as we look at ourselves with love, right, we're seeing this human form, we're experiencing things as a human being, and God is interpreting itself to us through this form, right? So if we are receptive to that interpretation, then we get this full knowledge of an aspect of ourselves maybe that we've never seen before. Look in the mirror. Look in the mirror. What do you see? And, and if you see something that is not pleasing or good, then that is not God. Because God is all of those things. That God is that love, God is that purity, God is that truth of, that is eternal. These other things pass away, right? They're not with us forever. They pass away. They're just like clouds. They go by, right? This that's not God. That's just this passing through. Now, I'm going to use another example of really coming, God being interpreted through humanity, right? It has to interpret itself through humanity, right? So Rumi, and most of maybe you are familiar with Rumi. He was a Sufi mystic who we know through his poetry that is all about, you know, uh, knowing God. And knowing God, I said there are a lot of different languages, a lot of different metaphors that have grown up to talk about the thing itself. And for Rumi, this was the language of love and the beloved. And for Rumi, there was a wandering mendicant that came through, and he and Rumi, I don't know, they just took one look at one another, and there was something that clicked with them, and his name was Shams. And they went into retreat together, spiritual retreat together for a month. And during that time, it said that they just gazed into one another's eyes. So they were doing a certain kind of mirror work, right? They were looking deeply into one another's eyes. And as they looked into one another's eyes, they could, they saw something of the divine. They got a full force by gazing into one another's eyes of what this divinity is, what love is, what union is. So they had this deep mystical experience. When they came back from retreat, it said that both of them were transformed by what they were doing. And that is that's amazing, this transformation that can take place when we see when we see who and what we are. Now, of course, Rumi went on to write all of these poems, thousands of poems, to get at this experience that he had, to share that experience that he had, and to interpret that experience to humanity. And, we read those poems today, and we are also touched by that. We are touched by that, and we get a glimpse of what that totality of God is. So, this is something that we can do as well. Have you ever tried gazing into someone's eyes, right? It's, I've done it, just as a practice. And, at first I was a little bit self-conscious and a little bit nervous, about staring into someone's eyes. And, it's more than staring. It's really looking at someone and seeing them, right? Really seeing them. And we get beyond that outward form, right? What that outward form is. We look at the person as they are. And, that is an amazing experiment to do, right? It's an amazing thing to do. And of course, we do that with people we love. We will look at them and we see them. Oh, we see them through the eyes of love. And we do feel that divinity in them. And of course, that's what love is. That's a divinity acting as us. So, I'm going to invite you, this week, why don't you try doing this? Try looking in the mirror and just gazing at yourself with love, or do it with a partner. Just look into their eyes with this tremendous love and get a glimpse of exactly who we are. Now, I thought the next line of this passage was so tremendous. Spirit can make no gift that we do not accept. Okay, so what does that mean? My goodness, what are those gifts that we do not accept? That these gifts, well, we do accept them because he says that there's no gift that God makes that we do not accept. So we have in us everything. Now, where the thing is, right, where the what we're going to talk about is where choice lies, right? We have all of those gifts that God has given us. We are whole, perfect, and complete. That's just the truth right there. We are whole, perfect, and complete. So we can choose to use all of those gifts because we already have them. We're born with them. So this is where choice comes in. We can choose to live up. We can choose it. We can choose to use those gifts. We can choose to tune into them and use them. And, there's examples of people who may have physical limitations of some kind, but they far exceed those limitations the expectations that those limitations have physical limitations have put on them, because I believe they have chosen to use those gifts that God has given them. And, it is, and I don't want to make this as if, people they're choosing not to live to their fullest, right? I guess we do choose to. I'm not singling anyone out. That's what I want to say. I'm not singling anyone out. But I do believe that we have that choice to live life to the fullest if we so choose to do so, if we do not allow ourselves to be limited. And I'll just use this example. I was talking to a woman who has a beautiful voice. She sings. And she said that, people told her she couldn't sing. And for years, she didn't try because she just thought she couldn't sing. And she had some sort of limitation in her vocal cords. And they said she couldn't sing. There would never be a way she could sing. She couldn't hit these notes. She couldn't use her voice as an instrument because of this physical limitation. And she far exceeded that. She even recorded music. She sings and she enjoys doing this. It's who she is. That's who she came. That's what she came to express in this incarnation. And she overcame, or she just went through that barrier, that so-called barrier that was there, to use this instrument in the way that she wanted to, that she desired to. So we are not bound by any of this, any kind of physical, mental, any of that. If we break those chains, then we can step into who we are. Now, we are almost at our time, and I am, I barely touched this chapter, but I want us to know that these are the things that we're looking at. We are looking at the thing itself. We have everything from that pure essence, that pure source. And the way that it works is through this involution. I've given examples of it, how we can apprehend it, by really seeing who we are and knowing how big we are, right? We're really huge. We don't have to play small. We don't have to think we are just these little specks. Yeah, we may be, but in that, we may be materially, but spiritually, we are everything. We truly are, because there's no beginning and no ending to who God is. That's how it works. God is interpreting itself to us through this human incarnation. And we also are in this relationship with God, communing with God in this unity that we can achieve with spirit, right? That unity. So this is the mystical element that we always go back to. This is how it works. We accept it. We can accept the entirety of that and live our lives in this huge way. And I'm not talking about materiality, right? Necessarily. It doesn't mean that we have to have a whole lot of material goods. But we live large in terms of who we are. And then, maybe all of those things are added to us if that's what we so desire. But it's not necessarily about that. It is about that union with God, that knowledge that we are God. We have everything that God has because God has given it to us. And we can accept it all, be receptive to it all, and we can use it all. And that's how it works. That is our core teaching. We have that choice, we have everything, and we can use it all. So in that involution, planting the seed, right? That idea in the mind of God, then it manifests as our life. And I am so happy that you were here to join me this morning. And I really appreciate any comments that you you give in this and in these conversations. And, you know, we'll talk about whatever you want to talk about, because we're here to have a discussion and to generate deeper understandings of our teachings. So have a wonderful week. See you next time.
Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, for your continued support. Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown Atlanta, for your monthly contribution. Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, for your monthly contribution. And please help us welcome Om Center for Spiritual Living in La Mesa, California. Thank you for your monthly donation. Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, for your most generous donation. And a special thanks to Hefferland Foundation for your generous technology grant. And Suze Odgen, thank you for your very generous donation. And a big shout out to all our committed donors.
There's one power, invisible, and you see it everywhere and every day. One power in